Hey guys, welcome back to Antel Economics for podcast 15, where today me and Ravi are going to be discussing loads of different issues in our live discussion.
So before we get into that, obviously we have tweet of the week. So tweet of the week, this week is a bit different. So we have, should the UK government be encouraging schools to reopen despite research showing children being the main transmitters of the disease? So obviously, as we've seen, Boris Johnson's come out to say that he wants to ideally reopen the schools by next month. So can you guys head over to Antel Economics and give us your opinion, yes or no, and leave any comments down below?
Yes, to start off today, I thought that I came across this nice article about how to restructure after COVID-19, and it's about airline companies. What do you think, are the biggest issues facing airline companies going forward? I thought that's a decent place to start.
Yeah, I think that's a nice place to start. I think one of the main issues will be it's not to do with just them staying afloat, it's actually to do with other countries. They need other countries to permit travel between countries. So obviously we've seen corridors being opened up, for example, between the UK and Spain, but
Yeah,
then instantaneously they were shut down, and therefore people had to quarantine when coming back. So I think
yeah.
it's I think there'll be a heavy dependence on what other countries will allow, which will give them a steer of for their customers.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that they've been facing lots of hardships. Lufthansa, they've had their largest ever quarterly loss. BA have made plans to cut 12,000 jobs. This isn't just affecting the airline companies and their revenue and their investors. It's affecting these people that work for them, and we're going to see some unemployment coming, high levels of debt. So, in terms of restructuring, how do you think the airline company should go ahead?
Well, I think restructuring airline companies is something very difficult to do. They obviously a lot of them outsource, say, for example, their engines and turbines to places like Rolls-Royce, and Rolls-Royce have announced a lot of job cuts and losses this year. So obviously, maybe they should look to having their own sort of place where they can manufacture parts for the aircraft.
Oh,
Whereas,
oh, so, so I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah. So you're saying that they should be more independent and less reliant on outsourcing.
yeah,
Oh,
hundred
yeah,
percent.
that's a good shout. Yeah, yeah. That's what I was kind of thinking along similar lines too. And I guess it all just relies on how quickly the tourism industry just picks up again, and how quickly the pandemic can calm down, I guess.
Yeah, I think the danger is that COVID-19 has installed fear into a lot of people, a lot of frequent flyers, like ourselves
Yeah,
on holiday most summers. This summer we've stranded, stuck in the UK. Weather's good
yeah.
today, but it's not always good. And so people are eager to get out, but there's always that sort of worry that, if you go out then and you can't get back into the UK, then there's a danger.
In terms of encouraging this kind of this tourism and stuff, what's your opinion on the government subsidizing for holidays? I think there was something in Japan where tourists were being discounted for going there to
Um,
kickstart the kind of
Yeah, I
consumption
thought
that.
I think I did see that actually. I saw Japan and Tokyo offering subsidies, but I don't know. I feel like for certain countries, like if we take Dubai for example, tourism hotspot over the decades, past 10 years, it's become an absolute
Mm,
booming place for the tourism industry, and they've done really well. They've invested their money in the right places to
yeah,
build a future economy that can rely on tourism. So a country like that doesn't need essentially to offer subsidies because there'll always be a demand to go to travel to that country,
mm,
as you can see with the massive amount of flights they have. I think with maybe smaller countries, again, Tokyo, Japan, I think it's too big, but Tokyo and Japan, it's a very expensive country. If you go there, you have to be fairly well off. For example, if you're going from Europe, it's a long flight. It's not cheap, so I feel like subsidizing it could help, but I don't feel like it will help the vast majority of people who may just normally travel around in Europe if
yeah.
they live in Europe.
Go
So yeah,
going
I,
back to what you said about Dubai.
yeah,
The, don't you think if they're so reliant on tourism that it is even more important that they kickstart their economy and support these local businesses that rely on the income coming from tourists
yes,
through these subsidies?
yeah, that's a very good point. So obviously there's your argument there, but I feel like with a country like Dubai, it has such a foothold in the tourism industry. It's not as necessary to offer subsidies compared to, say, smaller countries. So say if you take I don't know, a smaller country in Asia, for example,
Yeah,
maybe there it will be more effective where they actually do heavily rely on tourism. Dubai
yeah,
still has its oil coming in. So right
yeah,
now they are okay, but obviously in the future, say this was in 50 years' time, then yeah, it may be a bit more of a severity.
yeah. And Dubai specifically as well. I believe the COVID situation there isn't as severe. So that's all.
Obviously, their weather's helping them out. We know that as the hotter the weather is, essentially it should mean the less number of cases. But as we creep back towards winter,
Mm.
um, what do you think about a second lockdown?
I think a second lockdown in the United Kingdom is very unlikely. I think the cases are being managed well, and to be honest with you, I feel like the United Kingdom are actually doing a good job in terms of social distancing and being careful. Every time I go out, I see people in the masks. I see people adhering to the rules, so I think it's good. But for United States, I think we can expect to see a second wave pretty soon.
What do you think about, say, obviously there's been a heat wave in the UK over the past couple of weekends, and the beaches have been absolutely heaving.
Mm,
Loads and loads of people going there, and places like Bournemouth and Brighton be calling for shutdowns of the beaches and
yeah.
local shutdowns to prevent people from actually entering their towns. So what do you think about that? Because clearly social distancing isn't being implemented everywhere.
Yeah, no, definitely. I understand what you're saying, and it's going to take a bit of time for COVID-19 to reach stages in which it gets back to normal. But in terms of a second wave and reaching the amount of cases that we did beforehand, I don't think that's going to happen. I think even though there are people going out, I don't think that the percentage of people having COVID and all of those statistics that we see on the news and stuff, it just correlates to it, for me at least, there not being a second wave.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a danger. There's a danger that a second wave could happen.
Yeah,
As the virus mutates, as it can become more deadly and dangerous,
yeah,
there's always a chance. I think, a couple of days ago, there were over 1,000 cases, more than June the 25th. So it's slowly
mm,
showing signs of rising. I think there's been some discrepancy with those stats, though. So I
yeah,
wouldn't heavily rely on them. But I think something that the UK government must think about is definitely local lockdowns. There's been one in Preston, there's been one in Leicester.
yeah,
I think things like those are very good because it ensures that certain towns and areas are being kept secure and the COVID, virus can sort of die out there to an extent. Whereas if
yeah,
we
yeah.
have mass movement throughout the UK, there's a chance of spreading it again to the extent as
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, that's I 100% agree with you there. Um, in terms of kind of COVID and the situation, obviously we've been seeing a large environmental improvement throughout the world, and we have touched upon this in the past. But what do you think is going to happen in the future? I mean, maybe next year, for example, when things might be going back to normal. Do you think we'll see any difference in congestion charges or cost of petrol, taxes that are
Yeah.
imposed? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think obviously linking back to airlines, it's been excellent. We've seen a lot more greener climate. We've seen airlines
Yeah,
been unable to operate, so a lot of, but then, there's always things that we can do as much as we can, us people, we can do as much as we can, but then you have natural disasters like
mm,
happened in Mauritius the other day where, a Japanese um, ship has, had a leakage and there's now gallons and gallons of oil
yeah,
within vicinity of Mauritius, which has a bunch of beautiful beaches, and again is a country that rely on tourism. So by destroying these sorts of natural places of great
yeah,
habitat, you're going to destroy the fish and things that live in there. It's not great
yeah,
for the system. But going back to the original point, I think to combat this, it will be a bit difficult because I think we haven't actually taken initiative to cause this change. It's happened due to a pandemic, so we haven't actually done anything in ourselves to help
yeah,
this. So for it actually to be implemented, I feel like the government will have to use some initiative and do things like you said. So maybe put higher taxes on the price of fuel and petrol and try and incentivize people to use greener means of transport.
yeah. I completely agree with you in that sense. I think that the future for the environment is definitely something that we're going to have to take into account, especially since we've seen how good it's been during lockdown. Obviously, one headline news that's been recent is the situation in Lebanon, the unfortunate event that happened in the capital. You know, Lebanon has a very competitive and a strong laissez-faire kind of economy. What do you think the effects of this explosion is going to be on that kind of economy? Because surely recovery is going to be much harder for a government that isn't as heavily government into for an economy that isn't such reliant on the government.
Yeah, I think it was going to be detrimental either way. You know, it's a massive explosion. 6 kilometers, 6 mile radius? It really is devastating. So for a country like Lebanon, which is already a poor country at LIDC, it's going to be very difficult for them to recover. I think it's going to take a lot of cooperation, not just between the government, but also the people. I think there's been protesting over the past few days as well. So I think there needs to be change in a country like Lebanon. What do you think about perhaps other countries like the UK providing additional aid towards a country like Lebanon?
Yeah, no, I think as an international institution, I think it's the UN. We all have a responsibility to help these countries in these situations, and so the UK should most definitely help out Lebanon. It is difficult though because we are in an economic crisis. We are in a pandemic, so there are other factors. But I think it's an issue of who needs it more, and in this stage, it is definitely Lebanon. You know, they've been in political unrest for a very long time. The country is known to have, water shortages and other kind of shortages too, and especially since their most used port is now destroyed too. We do need to shift attention to this country in crisis.
Do you think it will be beneficial for the UK in the long term in its economy? Do you think this will in some way actually help the UK?
I don't think this kind of situation is something that needs to be weighed with how it's going to benefit the UK. I think it's a responsibility of the UK to not support Lebanon fully, but to ensure that they are doing something to help the people and the humanitarian crisis that's going on. But in terms of actually answering a question based on facts, I think it is a leakage out of the economy. It is something that will have to be resulted through either increasing in tax or less fiscal injection, which could be harmful for the economy if you just take it on face value. But I think it's a cost that we do have to take.
Yeah, I think I agree. Yeah, I think the point that you made about humanitarian rights and fighting for their rights is definitely a valid point. 100% agree that we should be putting their lives sort of not in front of the UK citizens at the moment. We should be helping them alongside.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just was wondering what the COVID situation is in Lebanon. Do you know?
No, I'm not sure. Do you know?
I think it's around 6,500, so it's not too bad in Lebanon, luckily. But obviously, the economic unrest previously, it just makes the crisis even worse.
The issue is with something like this, so you have refugee camps set up, you have camps set up to help recover temporary campsites, and there's a lot of crowded, confined spaces. There's there isn't enough space basically for the that will have been affected in those sorts of areas, and that's where the danger lies. Where if the coronavirus can pick up again there, but then again, it's a hot country, so hopefully,
that's true.
They can combat it.
Following that crash too, and some tension between US and China, the price of gold has also shot up, hasn't it? I think it's gone up by nearly 7%.
Yeah.
8% over the past, and that's just a reflection of the kind of uncertainty that we're in. And I do expect gold to go up in price throughout the next year too, as well.
Yeah, I think gold is always been quite a safe investment, especially if you have physical gold. Very good. It's always worth a lot of money, and it only gets rarer to an extent. I feel like silver as well is ready to actually catch up and jump have a rise further than gold. Just because they've always been very, very level within their terms, and so I believe that silver over the next year will actually have a a very significant impact on the market.
That's the thing with these safe haven precious metals, isn't it? Their volatility is quite low because
Yeah,
they're very safe investment for people around the world.
yeah, definitely. I think they're definitely beneficial, especially for these low income countries where they find them. It can be a real sort of breather and a bit of financial help, and they can use it for exporting in these countries. Also, if you think about like Myanmar, you have like jade and different sort of rare gems as well. These are also very valuable.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, their jade industry is quite big, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think there's a slight issue there. You get quite a few. I forgot what they're called. I think it might be jadeites or jade pickers, and they basically just steal the jade and then sell it off illegally and things like that. And that's where
Yeah.
that's the problem with Myanmar. Bit of corruption, and you lose
Yeah,
early.
it's quite a
So
militarized economy, isn't it?
yeah, so
Yeah.
if a country like Myanmar was to get their political stance right and had a lot of stability, they're a country that I believe could really flourish because they do have the natural resources to push
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, I think that's a that just links back to Paul Collier's Bottom Billion book, isn't it? The
Yeah,
traps of poor governance. Even though you might have the resources, governance, in my opinion, is one of the most important kind of traps you have to overcome.
yeah, definitely. I think governance is very important, but also conflict. I think
Yeah,
conflict can also be the downfall of a lot of things. You know, whether it's international conflict or it's just civil unrest, it's very detrimental for a country's economy. So
yeah.
yeah,
On that quite international note, I think it's a good place to end off.
so yeah. Well,
Thank you
thank you
guys
guys
for
for
listening.
listening. Yeah, make sure you subscribe to Antel Economics and go follow us on Twitter and like. Thanks, guys.
Calm.